Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining us and welcome to this national broadcast for school business leaders. And it's our last national broadcast of the year, I believe. So this is open to members and non-members, and we're delighted by how many people have registered to join, and I know it's a really busy time, so we really appreciate you joining us today. My name is Maria Barrow and I'm a regional organiser for NEHT, and I'm joined by Rachel Younger, who is the branch secretary in Blackpool and also our chair of NEHT's ISBL Sector Council on the National Executive. So in terms of how this afternoon will run, Rachel will be speaking first about NEHT and how you can get involved, and she'll be followed by Steve Edmonds, who's Director of Advice and Guidance at NGA. The theme for this afternoon's event is around networks, connections and working relationships you might make as an SBL, working as you do in a role which is unique within the school structure and as such has its own unique set of challenges. We'll be running a couple of polls, the first of which ties in with Steve's session on working with your governing body, so I'll open up that before he begins. And later we'll be hearing from Pauline Aitchison, who is Deputy Director at Schools North East and the network lead for the National Network of Special Schools for School Business Professionals. And then hopefully from Natalie Dalvarez, she's an ISBL Fellow who sits on their Advisory Council and is Deputy CEO for the Diocese of St Albans Mat. I should say we just had some slight technical issues with Natalie, but hopefully we'll be able to get her in later. Cheryl Campbell, the CEO and founder of the Association of Main Business Leaders in Education, was hoping to join us, but unfortunately she is unable to, and therefore she's asked me to share some slides with you, which I will send around after the broadcast, and I'll speak for a few minutes about the work that the network are doing, along with how you can get involved. Finally, Paul Whiteman, General Secretary, will be speaking in the second half of the broadcast with an update from NEHT. So Steve is happy to take some questions after his session, and hopefully there'll be time to look at others as we go along. But it is a tight schedule, so anything we can't respond to tonight, we will take away and come back to you on. So please put your questions in the Ask a Question tab at the bottom of the screen. And the reason we ask you to do this is just that you can vote for your favourite question and they don't get lost in the chat box. There is also a link at the bottom of your screen to access our latest Q&As. And on the right-hand side of your screen in the chat box, there are tips on how to use the Crowdcast effectively. And I just need to read this statement here, which is, we appreciate you sharing and commenting on our events on social media. However, we would like to request that if posting photos of any of our digital broadcasts, you're mindful to not include comments from others which appear in the chat function. It's just during these challenging times, sharing personal views with like-minded others can be cathartic and empowering, and we would prefer those comments to stay within the community of the audience. So thank you for your understanding. If you lose connection for any reason, the broadcast will be available immediately after we've finished at 6. And I think that is probably all I need to say at this point. So I would like to welcome Rachel Younger, and thank you very much, Rachel.
Hi, everybody. I was going to say brilliant to see you all. I can't see you all, but I can see that there's a lot of people on the Crowdcast tonight, which is great to see. I know how busy all of you are, like me. I mean, December is, when you work in school, is always crazy, but this year in particular, of course, is particularly, especially so. So I think I'm just going to start by saying I don't know if you like me. I have a tendency to, I suppose I'm an introvert, so I tend to withdraw at times to kind of, re-energize. And there are times, I've got to be honest, like I'm sat here in my office at work now where I just want to turn off all the lights and hide under the desk and wait for everybody and everything to go away. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. And actually what I really need to do and why I'm here and why I guess all of you are here is network with each other and keep in touch with each other, because we are the best support for each other, because, we understand what each of us is going through. In particular, I just want to mention about sort of opportunities for networking within NEHT in particular. So for those of you who aren't members of NEHT, I would recommend you join, obviously. Those of you who are members of NEHT, there are ways that you can get involved at branch level and at wider levels like that. So as well as being the chair of the SBL Sector Council, I am a branch secretary here in Blackpool where I work, and that involves a number of things. So it's the roles within the branch are things like meeting with employers, to sort of negotiate on policies and things like that. There's also the casework side of it, which is particularly important, where it's the sort of the arm around the shoulder for colleagues who are going through tough times. You know, it could be with challenges at their work, and they need that support from a union rep who understands what they're going through, and can support on a policy side of things as well. There's also you might want to be branch treasurer. Obviously, we've all got the skills to do that, and get involved with organising training events, meetings, all sorts of things. So I really would encourage you to get involved in your branch. There are, I was going to say, yes, there'll be some links coming up throughout the meeting. I think there's one that's just come up there that gives you some idea of how you can get involved. And the other thing that will be coming up after Christmas is we've got a couple of vacancies for co-optees on our sector council. So there will be an email coming out to those of you who are SBL members at some point after Christmas, inviting applications for those posts. So I'd really encourage you to think about how you can get involved at that level. There is obviously a time commitment, but it is really interesting and really valuable, and we do really want to hear from members out there about what's important to you, what's important to us, how we can support you as a union. So thank you for listening, and I'll hand back to Maria.
Thanks, Rachel. And the other thing I think we're going to pop into the chat box is also some information about the School Business Leader Conference, which will be happening in 2021 in Manchester, fingers crossed. And this will be focusing on setting up SBLs for a successful future, I believe. And I think the agenda is well on its way to being formulated already. So I'm going to move to Steve. Before I do, we're going to open, we've got 2 polls running this evening. We're going to open this one. Let me just make sure you can see it. Here we go. Is that visible to people? I hope so. If not, my colleague who's working behind the scenes will make it visible. So we are asking you, do you have a close working relationship with your governing body? With 4 options: I regularly engage with and support the governing body. I sometimes engage with and support. I rarely engage, and I never engage. But also in the chat, please do feel free to share examples of where things have worked well with your governing body, and also ask any questions as Steve speaks. And over to you, Steve. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Maria, and thank you, Rachel. And hello, everyone. It's really good to be with you and to be part of this event. For those of you, and I'm assuming there won't be that many of you who don't know or aren't familiar with NGA, National Governance Association, we are a charity and a membership organisation for governing boards in all state school structures. And the shorthand really for our charitable objective is that through promoting and supporting effective governance, we contribute to improving outcomes for children and young people. That's the shorthand, and we can't do that on our own. We value the relationships that we have with the professional associations, the other professional associations, I guess in the same way that you value the professional relationships that you have in your networks and indeed at school and trust level. I certainly count myself lucky and fortunate indeed to have had good, strong working relationships with colleagues in NAHT during this very, very difficult time, in particular when we've been part of those consultative forums at national level, collaborating on joint pieces of guidance, like our guide to being strategic for school leaders and governing boards, which was published earlier this term, and indeed through attending events like this Crowdcast, which have been so valuable. It feels like an absolute lifetime ago, but I was thinking about this, and I think the last face-to-face meeting that I attended before the first national lockdown was the School Business Leaders Sector Council meeting in March, and that was to discuss how we could work together to strengthen that relationship between governance and school business leadership, which is so fundamentally important. And that's what I'd like to touch on with you today. But before I do that, I do want to offer a genuine and heartfelt thank you on behalf of NGA and indeed all the governance community, if I may, if indeed I can speak for them, for the incredible job that you've done as school business professionals over the last few months. I think Natalie Arnott, whom I know you know well, and is a very big supporter of school business professionals in NHT on the policy side. I think Natalie was spot on when she referred to school business professionals in a Schools Week article as the quiet heroes of the COVID crisis. Grappling with unheard of logistical challenges. Relationships with families, juggling those already stretched resources and providing information to support decision making. And that's not just at school level, but indeed at governance level. And the fact that you've done that amidst your own family pressures, and you've done that with a degree of professionalism and calm, principled leadership. Actually, the type of leadership I think we could have done with at government level more frequently during this period, I think is real credit to you. So I just wanted to have that opportunity to say thank you as a governor and a trustee myself for everything that you do and a massive contribution that you make to the schools system. And what your efforts do for us at NGA and that vital work that you carry out, as well as inspiring us, it really motivates us as an organisation to ensure that business leadership in whatever context you operate is recognised. It has the recognition, has the status, and indeed the remuneration that it deserves in schools and trusts and in the sector as a whole. And a huge part of that is strengthening that relationship, that strategic partnership between the board and school professionals. And what we really want to see, and I hope you can recognise, connect with this as well, is business professionals and governing boards shaping the future really through intuitive practice. And what I mean by that is school professionals being involved, business professionals being involved in board level conversations which improve financial planning, secure sustainability at school or trusts, whether that's through a vehicle or a mechanism like ICFP or using financial efficiency tools. And that's going to be even more important. We recognise this, don't we, over the coming months. What we're sort of calling this next period the new normal, when your skills and your ingenuity will be called upon to make those stretched resources go further, because we know, don't we, that the public finances are in a very precarious position. We have to do all we can to keep applying the pressure for schools funding to be what it needs to be to achieve the outcomes we all want. But there will never be enough, or it feels that way. And so making the most of what we have is a recurring theme, and your skill, your ingenuity and your professionalism really makes a huge difference to governance at all levels. So that's why that's a continuing aspiration for us at NGA. And whilst your own experience of engagement with governing boards may be different, and wherever you are on that spectrum, it'd be interesting to see what the poll says about that. There are some enablers of teamwork between boards and business professionals that we never pass up an opportunity to mention in forums like this. And I don't know what you think, but the key enabler is, as it always is relationships, professional relationships, strong relationships based on trust. That's one of our 8 elements of effective governance. And again, never more evident than in COVID times. And the relationships that we think, are fundamental, that school business professionals really should do as much as they can to invest with, is of course with the chair of the board, whether that's the board itself, the local board, or relevant resource committees, and the executive leader. And it's through those relationships and through that ongoing dialogue with them, that you shape your working relationship with the rest of the board and with the governance of the institution, and the way you engage with them as a professional advisor, whether that's on financial requirements or accountability arrangements, whether that's as a reporter or an internal consultant, if you like, that, you know, so influencing ethical and efficient procurement practice, HR, marketing, premises, all those things, or whether it's using your skill and ingenuity to help boards navigate this growing and, I would say, more complex and bewildering set of financial efficiency resources that are well regarded and much needed, but not always easy to apply at governance level. And so that you know, vital sort of professionalism and that professional element that you bring to help boards navigate those things so that they meet their intended purpose is so important. And if you're not part of those conversations, or you know, that's not done intuitively or as part of a structured routine, then those opportunities are missed, which is why we think, you know, that the investments in relationships are so important. And we think the relationships work if you understand the governing context, and that's a two-way process. Each side understanding each other's role and what's expected. And what I mean by that is that a relationship between school business professionals and governing boards shouldn't be a transactional one. It shouldn't be one where the board doesn't recognise the wider skill set, reporting and leadership capacity that a school business professional can bring. And it's not a relationship where the school business professional views the board solely in transactional terms, almost as commodities in a compliance process. You know, sign this, sign off on that, be aware of this. You know, pay them rations if you want to use the crude term. So, you know, there's a lot we can do on both sides to make the relationship work, and that's why school business leaders are such an important part of our Educators on Board campaign. And what that does is encourage education professionals to govern at different schools. And I know many of you do that, and I thank you for it. And I don't think I need to sell the benefits of governing boards understanding the remit of school business and professionals to utilise the information that you provide them in a beneficial way. Because those boards that do, and you'll know who they are, you know, see the benefit, and they see the benefit in terms of more efficient budget processes. They see the benefit in terms of their strategic financial planning and better risk management, which is another skill or an art form, if you like, that very much needs developing in the world of school governance. So again, from an NGA perspective, we prioritised highlighting the role of school business leaders in any work relating to that second core function of governance, which is effective management of financial resources. So if you're familiar with our guidance, or you know, if you'd like to become more familiar with our guidance in this area, or indeed our policy work, hopefully you will see, you know, those tangible links that we make between the process and the governing responsibilities and the support provided by the school business professional. Again, whether that's something to do with reducing staffing costs, so no, I should put that another way, shouldn't I? Find the most efficient staffing structures, ICFP disciplines. You know what I mean as experts, or whether it's in broader policy work, like for instance highlighting some of the issues raised in ISBL's business leadership survey, or through Educators on Board, as I mentioned. So my commitment to you, I guess, is that we will keep doing that. But if that work is going to have an impact, which we want it to, then it has to be grounded in real experiences, your real experiences. So, you know, a plea from me really to keep sharing with us your experiences of working with governing boards, whether that's in a context of your own role, you know, as a leader in school, or whether it's as you know, in a governing role, and the relationship and understanding that governing boards have of school business professional workload, their engagement with professional standards and CPD, and that really important role in executive reporting, you know, advising the board to make really informed and smart decisions that make a difference to children, because that's ultimately what we're all about. And of course, the remuneration aspect, which I think I will be surprised if we didn't come back to in the conversation. So hopefully I've triggered some thoughts in that garbled 8 or 9 minutes, hopefully not too garbled, and we can have a good conversation about it. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thanks so much, Steve. That's brilliant. And I'm pleased to say the results of the poll are pretty emphatic. That we have 16 votes to say I regularly engage with and support the governing body, and 2 votes for I sometimes engage, and no votes for the other 2. So that's great. And we have a couple of questions. So the most popular question at the moment is from Andy Meller. Hi, Andy. How can we work together to get the message to all governing bodies about remunerating SBLs as school leaders? Oh, Steve, you're on.
Yeah, sorry, I'm on mute. That wasn't deliberate, by the way. So I might take it. Shall I take this one first? Shall I attempt to respond to this one first? Yeah, because let's be clear about this. Where school business leaders have a similar level of responsibility and accountability as colleagues whose work is focused on teaching and learning or behaviour, then they should be remunerated on the same pay scale. NGA is very clear about that, and in its advice to governing boards. Now, it's a complex picture, as you know better than anyone else. Many school business professionals have their pay determined by local government pay scales, and they're not flexible enough to take into account, the growth in scope and responsibility of the role. So I think there's a real case for a bespoke pay structure that does recognise those things. So to answer Andy's question directly, I think really that issue of raising the status and profile of the role goes hand in glove with the with the remuneration at a level that is commensurate with the role that's been performed. And it's a very similar response to the one I give when I'm asked about remuneration for those who clerk governing boards or in governance professional roles, because that is another role that is often underutilised, underpaid, and overlooked, if you want to put it that way. So that will be my response to that.
Thank you, Steve. And we have another one from Jatin Samji. What work does the NGA directly do with governors to raise their understanding of the role and profile of school business professionals? Okay,
I think it comes in many forms, and as I said in my introduction, we try to ensure that the leadership role and the leadership provided by school business professionals is brought out in the guidance that we produce, whether that's independently or with partners. So, for example, 2 very significant joint pieces which have been produced in partnership with NAHT and other associations, our guidance on being strategic for governing boards, which I mentioned, and also what governing boards and school leaders can expect from each other. Both of those pieces refer very clearly and explicitly to school business professionals and school business leaders being part of that leadership team effort, and boards considering them as such. When it comes to the more bespoke guidance we produce, whether that's on ICFP or other aspects of resource management, again, we never say to governing boards, this is an activity that you carry out in isolation with limited executive reporting. We actively encourage engagement with school business professionals. So that's really on the sort of bread and butter side. But in terms of the policy aspect, the broader side, we work very closely with ISBL and others to raise the profile and status of the profession and what on what's done to empower it through professional standards. There's always more we can do, and I'm happy for suggestions I can take forward in my conversations with people like Natalie or Stephen Morales or others.
That's lovely. Thank you so much, Steve. I think if everyone's happy, then we'll move on to Pauline. And Pauline is from the National Network of Special Schools for School Business Professionals. And we're really pleased to have her here tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Natalie. Sorry, Maria. We've been talking about Natalie so much. So thank you, Maria and Rachel. It's really interesting to hear more about the work that you're doing, and also to hear from Steve about developing that productive working relationship with governors. When I was in SBM, I had a really good working relationship with the governors and the chair. I attended all of the meetings and subcommittee meetings, and they regularly visited me in my office, and this really helped me understand the work that they were doing and vice versa. So I think it's a really important relationship to have. And also just to reiterate what Steve said about the work that SBMs have been doing at the moment, I think Steve covered that really well, but just to put my bit onto that, you are truly amazing, and never feel that this goes unnoticed by those that matter. Your colleagues, students and parents really appreciate this, and the wider education world really take their hats off to you at the moment. So, thank you to the NAHT for giving me the opportunity to speak about NNoSS, the National Network of Special Schools for School Business Professionals. So, as Maria said, I'm Pauline Aitchison, I'm the Network Lead, and I'm also Deputy Director of Schools North East. I'm a former school business manager myself, and I have worked in education for over 20 years. So this is a new network being supported by the Department for Education. One of the key initiatives in the department's school buying strategy is to provide school business professionals with access to a network of peers where there is none. Currently, the DFE have over 100 registered networks on gov.uk, so if anyone is looking to join one, this is a really good place to start. While special school SVPs are part of these great networks, it was evident through scoping meetings held by the DFE that there was an appetite to have a dedicated network, understanding the topics and challenges that were unique to them. Schools North East was delighted to be asked to facilitate this network. We are a regional network of all 1,150 schools in the North East of England, and we are a registered charity. Set up in 2007, 5 schools, 4 schools, we are a network for all, totally inclusive, regardless of stage or type of school, and we are the first and only school-led regional network in the UK. We are a driver of change in the region, lobbying to change the negative narrative that surrounds our schools and ensuring that the context of the North East is recognised. We bring together school leaders, working closely with CEOs, head teachers, SBMs, governors and all school teams. And it is our expertise in strong and successful networks that enables us to now facilitate this, a national network for school business professionals working in England's diverse STEM and AP sector. So the appetite for collaboration is evident, and in the first 6 months since launch, we've had over 160 SBMs joining the network from special schools, AP and PRUs, and hospital schools, with a wide range of job titles. SBM, office managers, trust managers, CFOs, COOs, and strategic leads. And from a cross-section of maintained academies and preschools. So this is a totally inclusive network which aims to facilitate good and best practice and to lead, drive and deliver behaviour changes in schools' buying practices, while being a source of support, information, advice and guidance. To offer CPD opportunities that are relevant and timely, and we have the first of these coming up in January, looking at ICFP in special schools and AP. We aim to engage with decision and policy makers, helping build and provide evidence to support lobbying, and we were delighted to team up with the SEND Reference Group recently to provide evidence of additional COVID expenditure for a DFE briefing paper. We aim to work together to drive efficiencies, share resources and find solutions for issues, and to provide a valuable support to the SEND head teacher groups that already exist, and bring together a strong voice of the school business professionals who work so hard to ensure that their schools are well resourced to support the children and the young people that they serve. And we will do this by connecting colleagues from across the country to build personal networks of support. bring those CPD opportunities and school visits when we can have them to learn what others do. An annual conference will take place with keynote speakers, interactive workshops and networking. We will engage with other groups, including SDN, SEND and head teacher networks to share the information that we have. And we have an active online community, which is the first point of contact for all members. Currently, our members come from over 70 areas across England, and as I said earlier, from a whole range of schools. And one thing they all have in common is the desire to work together. Each one of them is incredibly passionate about their school and about their students, and they are all very generous with their time and are eager to share their experiences and learn from others. And it is this willingness to support each other and the sector that will lead to real change. Now, where STPs didn't have a local peer to work with, they can find that person within the network. Although NNoSS is unique to the special sector, thankfully this willingness to support is a characteristic of all SDNs, and I see that sharing going on in SDN networks across the North East and indeed the rest of the country. If you're not already part of a network, I strongly advise you join one. If one thing COVID has taught us is that although face-to-face meetings are not possible at the moment, the new online world means a friendly face is only a click away. The Key did a survey recently on SDNs, and they looked at pre-COVID. Luckily, they've completed a questionnaire in December 2020, and they did it again in July 2020 to see what the difference was in networking and that peer-to-peer support for school business managers and school business leaders. And although physical network opportunities are not able to happen at the moment, a lot of them have moved to online, and this is bringing opportunities for networks across the country to connect and to collaborate with each other. And I do hope that that is something that does continue. We all definitely want to get back to face-to-face networks, and one of the things SDNs do the best is networking and enjoying that time that they have together. But I think that being able to keep some element of the online presence would be really useful moving forward. So that's a bit about NNoSS and the value that we aim to bring. The network is free to join at the moment, and members will be able to join the online community, virtual meetings and online CPD at no cost. I think the link is going to be dropped into the chat if anybody wants to find out any more. But just the real value of this network is just bringing everybody together. Definitely the conversations that we are having and listening to the passion that the SDNs have and the change that they want to make, it's evident that this is going to be a long-standing network and one that I'm very, very proud to be connected with. So thank you, Maria, and I'll pass back to you.
Thank you, Pauline. That's brilliant. And I was going to say to you, actually, I don't have the contact details that I need to share in the chat box. So if you could pop them in, that'd be fantastic. Thanks.
I will do, yes.
So before we move on, I'm going to open up the second poll, which is, do you anticipate being able to use the new reimbursement scheme? So for context, this is the scheme to support schools with the cost of supply, details of which are on our website, and hopefully we'll pop a link in the chat box there. So I'll just make that visible now. Now, unfortunately, we have had some technical difficulties, so please bear with me whilst you hear me speak for probably a bit too long. But we were hoping to welcome Natalie Dalvarez from ISBL. Instead, she had some problems before we came into the briefing. So she shared some notes with me. So I do apologise as I just read, but I just want to make sure that she's had the opportunity to say what she'd like to say. She has also said that she'd be happy to take part in a Zoom call if anyone's interested at a later date. And if you are, please email us at organising@nneht.org.uk. And again, we'll pop that into the chat box. So I'll just read through the notes that Natalie sent through very kindly. So she says, we will each have different approaches to networking, and some people are very comfortable with it, and for others it will make them feel slightly uncomfortable. So it's important to find out what works for you. There are so many ways now that you can start to build your professional networks. Education is one of the easiest sectors to build a network, as people are so willing to share and support each other. Social media, particularly Twitter and LinkedIn, engage where you can, but even following others means that you're in the conversation and you will start to build a picture of people across the country. If they are talking about a topic that's pertinent to you, message them directly if you don't want to comment in a public forum. Joining local groups. Hopefully your predecessor would have started on this information to you, passed on this information to you. However, if your role is new to your school, then you may be starting from scratch. Look at the ISBL website or gov.uk website, where they list local business professional groups for you to join. There are also virtual groups that you can join. LinkedIn have some, FD Forum. Some of your suppliers may also offer hosted group meetings. Auditors tend to offer this. If you're a maintained school, ask your local authority if they are aware of any groups. Attending conferences and events like today, either virtually or in person, is a great way to meet people. If people give their contact details, follow them up. Keep their details on file for when you may need their support at a later date. Schools within your area, call them up, introduce yourself, pop over for a coffee when we can do that. See if they know of any local groups you could join. Have regular catch-up calls so that you can help each other. It's rare that you'll be working on something that other colleagues won't have done in some form or another. Ask your head teacher to introduce you to SBLs of schools which they work closely with. Heads have a fantastic network, so tap into that. And she mentioned some other organisations, Schools Forum. Can you observe meetings? And obviously NEHT. So I think that's probably the main message, hopefully, that Natalie wanted to get across. And before I move over and welcome Paul to the meeting, I also just want to talk about Cheryl Campbell, who was also hoping to join us today. Let me just find my notes. Here we go. Cheryl is the CEO and founder of the Association of BAME Business Leaders in Education. She shares some information and slides, which I'll disseminate, and I will give a brief overview now. And I hope I'll do it justice, but we will be putting some links in the chat box to ABLED's website and contact details so that you can gather more information there. So Cheryl is currently a school business finance and operations director, and she entered the profession in 2015. And she was driven to create the Association of BAME Business Leaders in Education, also known as ABLED, because of the noticeable lack of diversity at conferences, as well as regional and local meetings. So ABLED want the leadership of schools to mirror the communities you serve and to prepare pupils for the wider world experience. ABLED's goals are as follows. So following ISBL's workforce survey in 2020, it showed less than 2% of SBLs are from a BAME background. So they engaged with ISBL to see how they could refine this research. And the goals are to promote diversity within the professional school business leadership, to develop a network of professionals of all ethnicities, to support Black, Asian and minority ethnic SBLs and encourage new entrants into the profession, to raise visibility and provide opportunities, and to engage with a wide range of organisations. And what they've achieved so far is that they've established a bursary programme to support aspiring and existing SBLs. 2 companies have committed to a bursary award this year, and 2 further companies are sponsoring their website. And ABLED has participated in a number of webinar and panel discussions, including for ASCL, Virtual Map Expo and Zen Educate. So as you'll appreciate, it's a really brief overview, and I think it should be said the association was formed in May 2020, so it is very new, and I encourage you all to go and have a look at their website. And as I say, I think you've probably all heard enough from me. So I'm delighted that Paul Whiteman, our General Secretary, is here to speak to us this evening. And I need to look at the poll. Do you anticipate being able to use the new reimbursement scheme? And again, very emphatically, no is 94% of the votes, and 1 person is unsure. So thank you very much for that. We'll certainly use that information. And yes, so again, thank you very much, and we'll move to Paul now.
Thanks, Maria, and great to be here. So if we've had some technical difficulties this evening and lost a couple of speakers. Does that mean I've got bags and bags of time to fill and can go on?
You can go on and on
about whatever's on my mind at the moment. Obviously not. It's the evening, and everybody either needs to finish off their day's work or get home to see your families, which you're not doing enough of at the moment, I know. So that I'll only fill the 10 minutes or so that I was supposed to fill. But if there's questions there, I'm happy to stay around for as long as it takes to answer the questions. And I heard earlier that Natalie, who works in our policy team, has referred to all of you as the quiet heroes of this pandemic. I think I'd rather use the phrase unsung heroes, because we're not talking enough about the impact that you've had as school business leaders in the education response to COVID, and the success, frankly, that has been despite the government's best efforts to get it wrong, frankly, and I don't think we need to guard that, because it has been, it appears, determined to get things wrong in education at every turn. If anybody has been on any of the crowdcasts that I've done in the last few days, the opening couple of minutes you're going to be familiar with by now, because I tend to run us through just the short history of where we've been, because I think it's important, that short history, to show that actually in the last couple of weeks we're beginning to make a little bit of progress with government. And why is that important? Because what comes after this pandemic has to be better than the system and the organisation that we had before we went into it in the early part of this year. So that's really the theme of where I'm going to go about what next, because hopefully the promise of a vaccine on the horizon gives us all enough hope to begin to think about what next too. So what have we been through? Well, politically, education is a priority, but I think for this government, just saying that schools are open is the true priority, and they're not really concerned about the quality and continuity of education that we deliver. And if we go through the short history, when we first restricted access to schools, the advice that we got from government was poor, and you and your leadership teams had to interpret that advice so that only the right pupils and the right children came into school, being the most vulnerable, and those truly that were key worker families that had no other option rather than the enormous list of key workers that the government delivered. Absolutely fantastic praise for the business leadership community in terms of how you funded free school meals as the free school meals voucher system collapsed around you. I've heard of working into the evening and sleepless nights and everything that went with it, and you should be truly, truly commended for the work that you did with our most vulnerable to make sure that children continue to be fed, even delivering food to homes and food packages to homes of the most vulnerable, and that isn't spoken about enough. And then when the home learning narrative came in and the talk about laptops and everything else, your work to try and get your hands on those elusive laptops and to repurpose kit that you had to make it work, really, really important. And the government still hasn't delivered on its promises there, albeit putting more and more pressure upon schools to deliver all the time. You'll be aware in the educational context, everything that's going on with now, because it's been in public for a few days now, but what's going on with SATs, what's going on with exams, the delays to inspection, and that's a real movement. Only up until 2 weeks ago, we had full statutory assessment going through, a full exam series without any organisation around the what if on the exam series and any alteration to exams, and a return to full inspection in January. And I'm really pleased that at last government is responding to you as a profession and your voices, which we're articulating on a daily basis. So that's what's been happening. But the government doesn't trust us. You've proved time and time again that you're equal to the challenge, and you've proved just how wonderful education can be on the front line. But the reason it doesn't trust us, or how I know it doesn't trust us, is because they assume emergency powers to force you to do things that have no real education basis. And won't take us any further forward in terms of their continuity powers, emergency powers, and then they hit you with a pay freeze. And you as a community, an underpaid part of the management teams and the leadership teams in schools anyway, so you'll suffer as badly, if not more so, as we deal with that pay freeze. So why do I want to talk about some hope for the future? So let's have a look at that. We've moved the government from an entrenched position of full inspection in January to a more reasonable approach to that, a more reasonable approach with statutory assessment and a more reasonable approach to exams. On the money, we've got a system which you've just told me you can't access, but at least it's a system and they're beginning to recognise a problem. And believe me, we will continue to push incredibly hard on that. And today, an announcement that hasn't landed terribly well, and I seem to be getting some of the blame for this, although this is a government decision and hasn't been agreed by the unions, we're just commenting on it, that schools can use the powers they already have to have an inset day towards the end of term, so there's more distance in terms of isolating, having to contact isolating families at the end of term. Now, remember, only 2 weeks ago, the Department for Education threatened to take legal action against the Focus Trust for trying to do exactly that. And this is the important thing, allowing you in your leadership teams and with your head teachers to make good decisions, free of interference from government, that support your local communities, support the children that are in the care of your school and are good for education, rather than it being a very polarised debate around whether the school gates are open or the school gates are closed. Leadership teams need to have the freedom to use their expertise to keep children safe and to keep education going, which we've been arguing for. We've at least won back a very small amount of that freedom over the last 24 hours. But again, it's a step in a direction I didn't think this government would come. So that gives me a bit of hope that out of this crisis, we're beginning to see that we can force even this government that has closed ears to listen to the profession. And I hope we can do that on two levels. One, on an educational level, to listen to the experts of education, head teachers and their leadership teams about how to take things forward. But importantly, with you as a business leadership community as well, about how to run the efficient operation of schools on a day-to-day basis, how to make sure that money is spent truly efficiently rather than having some weird algorithms. We know how much trouble we can get into with algorithms and measurements about how to spend money when you're so good at driving the last penny out of every budget that you have. Trust us to get on with it, and I know that you as teams will deliver it too. So my last words on that really are to invite you. I talk to school leaders all the time about owning the profession, and normally I'm talking about the education profession, but I'm going to talk to you as business leaders now about owning your profession too, and speaking up to government through us and through others about the skills that you have, and putting alternatives to the bad ideas that come forward from government day in and day out, so that when we get through to a position that we're reinventing education after the vaccine comes through, that we can truly make sure we have a better system from the middle of next year onwards, rather than the system we came in with. We've got to be noisy. This won't be a time for us to breathe out as an association at NAHT and say, thank goodness we navigated that. It'll be time to redouble our efforts to influence a government that thinks it knows what it's doing, to listen to those that really do, and make sure that children truly are at the hearts of the decisions that they make, because they're in your hearts with every decision that you make. So thank you for listening to me this evening. Hopefully a little bit of kind of hope and expectation in what are our darkest times right now. But you're getting towards the end of term, and let's hope we can all get through and have a well-deserved break in a couple of weeks' time. But enough for me. I'm sure there'll be a couple of questions that come in, but if not, I'll breathe out and get a cup of tea.
I think you're off the hook, Paul. I can't see anything that's come in. But thank you for offering. I think Rachel's just going to say a few words and then we'll wrap up the session. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, just to echo what Paul said, really. I mean, we all deserve a fabulous break over Christmas. This has been a tough year. And I know, from networking with you on Twitter and emails and other places where I see and talk to colleagues, that you're all rising to the challenge and we're all doing a fabulous job. And hence we do deserve a little bit of time off and enjoy the time you've got with family and friends. If there is anything, of course, that you want to input or want questions that you want to ask, do keep firing those things through to NAHT. Your input is very valued, and your voices are very valued. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. So as I say, we've got the links in the side there, and I'll send round a link to this session tomorrow. And hopefully some slides as well. And I apologise for the technical difficulties, but hopefully you found this evening beneficial. So again, all that remains for me to say is I hope you have a really restful break when it does come. It's been a really, really long term, and thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you.